Welcome to the Dawgs Table. Hosted by Craig Fountain and
Ryan Angelo.
Get access to special guests. Anyone can join the Dawgs Table. Find the link to join the show in the comments when we go live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Periscope, and everywhere on the BIGPLAY network. Here's your hosts.
Welcome to the Dawgs Table. I'm your host, Craig Fountain, here with my co-host, Ryan Angelo. How are you doing today, Ryan?
I'm good, buddy, but I'm very disappointed in you because you said that this week my name would be changed.
Yes. The audio from the voiceover guy did not come back in time, but that should for sure be worked out by next week. The robot voice will be gone.
All right, better be.
But yeah, it's been an eventful week, and we have a lot to cover on the show, and we have a special guest who I'll bring in shortly. Redleg, thanks for joining the show. If you are on YouTube or Facebook, on the BIGPLAY or Dawgs Table channels, you can comment and we can display your comments and interact with you, answer your questions. You can tell us we're wrong. Whatever you want to do. Twitter doesn't quite have that functionality yet, but we are a Cleveland Browns Roundtable discussion show. If this is your first time watching, we are brought to you by BIGPLAY, Labatt Blue Light, and Remax Edge Realty, the JC Group. And we are going to go over some Deshaun Watson stuff tonight. The NFL appeal process. We'll go through some of that. Kareem Hunt. We have some stuff to talk about there. And we have some injury updates for you and some potential solutions for those. Redleg, I hope you are enjoying Orlando, Florida. I am so jealous right now. Hey, Jenna, how you doing? Thanks for joining the show. And all right, so we have had this special guest on before. He was absolutely awesome when we had him on the last time. This is the first time with him joining the show when Ryan's on, and I'm excited. I loved having this guy on the last time, and if you are on Brown's Twitter, you are no stranger to none other than the Blake Weiner. How you doing, Blake?
I've never gotten a
the Blake Weiner.
I'm basically like Ohio State.
Absolutely. And Blake brings us some expertise. And for those that are watching that may not be familiar with you, why don't you let us know who you are, what your background is, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. So my name's Blake. I'm a lawyer. I graduated from Georgetown Law School a few years ago. After graduating, I clerked in federal district court in the Southern District of West Virginia for a year for a United States District Court judge like Sue Robinson. After my clerkship, I worked at the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. I worked at the criminal division where I was a prosecutor, and then I worked in the civil section where I defended the United States in civil lawsuits. And then after that, I actually just recently, a couple months ago, left the DOJ to start my own practice. I now have my own firm in Richmond, Virginia, where I practice all across the state of Virginia. I do basically criminal defense and police misconduct plaintiffs work.
Excellent. And a lot of expertise there. And the last time Blake came on the show, it was when this Deshaun Watson stuff was all kind of unfolding. And it was really great to have Blake on because he has experience in civil litigation. He has experience as when it comes to prosecution. and with federal law and all these other kind of things. So he has a unique angle that not all of us have. And that's why he's been such an awesome resource. And I'm glad to see, Blake, you've been making the rounds on Brown's Twitter, and I'm happy to see you getting your name out there. That's absolutely awesome. But we have you on now because last week we were praying that this was all going to be done and over with. And I messaged you and I said, hey, do you want to come on the show tonight? I know it's last minute. And you're like, I'm tied up. I said, all right, let's maybe shoot for next week if this doesn't go our way. And then what was it? The next day, we got the NFL appeal announcement. I texted you. I was like, yep. Next week, then you're like, oh, hell yes. So the NFL appeal process, why don't you go ahead, if you could, for us, for those watching, just give us kind of an overview of how this process works, what can and can't happen, what's happened so far, where it's headed, that sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll give you a sort of like a clarification before I start. I haven't read the entire collective bargaining agreement, and I don't even know if it's publicly available. So the fact that most people haven't, including people like Mike Florio, might be some reason why there's consistently some misinformation or guessing in some of this. So that's just something that everybody should know. But basically, from my understanding of the CBA and what's been reported, is that under the new structure that they have, and this Deshaun Watson situation is the very first time this structure is being used, Sue Robinson issues her findings, and basically under the CBA, her factual findings are completely binding on all parties. And actually, no party can appeal her factual findings. What's not binding on any party are her findings regarding a suspension. And so the structure is whatever she finds through this disciplinary process, through these hearings, through these investigations, whatever she finds factually, that's the rule. That's what happened. And then she issues what I have been saying is essentially a suggestion as to what the suspension should be based on her findings. Both sides have an opportunity to appeal if they want to the NFL. The NFL heard her findings, which said that this was some of the most egregious conduct she's ever seen in the NFL. And that said that she found him guilty basically of committing multiple violations of sexual assault under the policy, but she's only suspending him 6 games. And the NFL basically said, okay, we appreciate your factual findings. Based on those factual findings, we want to change the suspension. And that's what they're in the process of doing now.
All right. And they appointed a gentleman that is the former Attorney General of New Jersey, I believe, as the representative or whatever you want to call him.
The agent of Roger Goodell.
Yeah, the agent of Roger Goodell for this appeal. And it's supposed to be, the language is expedited, I believe. This is not going to be some long drawn out process like it was with Sue Robinson. This is supposed to happen very quickly. And from my understanding, and Blake, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is he has the choice to either just review all the documents and the findings and everything Sue Robinson used to make her decision, or he can expand upon that. Do you know if he can expand upon that?
I think he can, simply because of the fact that the NFLPA requested, I think, another hearing. And so obviously, I think the NFLPA knows the CBA pretty well. I'm guessing that if they're asking for another hearing, they know that the CBA in theory allows for it. At the very least, doesn't say it can't happen. But like you were saying, I don't see why. Let's be clear. If they do another hearing, it's going to completely eliminate any of the factual questions. He's not going to be hearing any argument as to whether or not Deshaun Watson violated the CBA. It would only be argument about why the suspension should be 6 games or less based on the violations of the CBA.
Now, I see a lot of questions daily on social media. And for me, I feel like I have a good understanding of, hold on, I got a comment here. Craig Foster, they can't bring new evidence is what I'm told. And that could very well be the case. And like Blake just suggested, there's really no reason to, because there's no argument as to whether or not he's quote unquote guilty. All right, we'll just call it, or he violated the policy, right? So the only argument can be is why or how long the suspension should be. Correct. Right. So Chris Mann says, so if this attorney general comes back and says 6 games again, then what is his decision the end all be all, or will Watson sue and we're back to 6? Okay.
No,
So
if
the
he-
first part of the question, and Blake, I believe the answer is there is nothing that can happen after that. Is that correct?
yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, if he says 6 games, nothing's going to happen because Deshaun Watson's going to be happy. I mean, I guess in theory, this goes to the question of can Deshaun Watson, if he appeals to, or not appeals, let me be clear, if he sues in federal court, would it be him suing everything and he's trying to get an injunction to play week 1, or because he didn't appeal, would he just get the injunction week 7? I don't think we know that because I don't think we've read that language in the CBA. But if he does get 6 games on this attorney general's reapproach, I mean, he's not going to sue because he was satisfied with the original finding, and he'll just say, thank God this all worked out, and then we'll be done with it. But that's not going to happen. He's not going to give him 6 games.
Right. And you know, the argument in Sue Robinson's decision, and we actually, Blake, we went through the 16-page report or findings almost sentence by sentence last week. So we really dug in and examined it. The most common thing that I'm seeing on social media that people are upset about is they're like, how is the NFL going to take a woman who is qualified to be a federal judge and just throw it out the window like it never happened? And I would like to point out personally, because I've been trying to, and nobody will listen, and maybe you can validate this, Blake, or tell me if I'm wrong. The way the CBA is structured for this process, this was actually a compromise between the NFLPA and the NFL during the CBA bargaining period, the negotiating period for the CBA. Before all this, Roger Goodell was the judge, jury, the executioner. He decided if somebody violated the policy and he dished out the punishment. Now, it's a step in the right direction, even though it's not a perfect system for the players, because Sue Robinson or whoever was appointed in her place for that position, her findings of fact are binding, like you mentioned earlier. Goodell does not get to decide if somebody is guilty or not guilty. Sue Robinson could have said Deshaun Watson didn't violate any policy, and the NFL couldn't have done anything about it. They couldn't have appealed it. They couldn't add suspension if she didn't issue any. Now, the fact that she found him to have violated policy, both the NFLPA and the NFL both have the opportunity to appeal this. The NFLPA came out before the decision was released and said, we're not going to do that. The NFL said, we're going to exercise our right to do this. And really the reason why is because we want more punishment. Now, that doesn't mean they're invalidating the fact finding of a federal female judge. That means that they disagree with her disciplinary, Blake, you called it a suggestion. You've been considering it a suggestion. She said, the NFL fucked this up so bad in the past that I can only give him 6 games based on precedent. The NFL, and she used terms like fair notice and things like that. And, Blake, how do you feel about that? Is the NFL just trying to right their wrong here? And it's unfortunate for Deshaun Watson. What's going on here? Because precedent does say at least 6 games. I guess it doesn't limit it to 6 games.
Exactly.
Are they hitting the reset button, or is everybody just wound up because they don't understand?
No, I think from my perspective, the NFL is doing exactly what the NFL's always done. And the NFL is acting consistent with what the NFL has done. I don't want to say always, maybe we could say in the last 7 or so years, which is they take these kind of allegations seriously in terms of suspension. Now, if you want to say, oh, it's only because of PR, whatever, I don't care why. The fact is they're doing it. And Sue Robinson, her logic in the opinion didn't make sense to me. Like you said, she talked about fair notice and principles of equity like that you usually see in criminal law. But in the very same opinion, she acknowledges that the NFL is making up the definition of sexual assault at that hearing, on the spot. They tell her at the hearing, here's the definition of sexual assault. It's not written anywhere. We're giving it to you now. And what did she say about that? Did she say, there's no fair notice here, therefore I cannot find any violation of sexual assault? No. Did she say, this isn't sufficient, I need better explanation? No. She said, in her opinion, the NFL basically can do whatever it wants. And so because they never defined it and they're just defining it now, I'm just going to accept it because the NFL does what it wants. So in one part of the opinion, she's acknowledging the NFL can do whatever it wants. It has this unbelievably broad discretion allowed for under the CBA. And then at the very end of the opinion, she wants to start limiting herself and say, okay, no, now I'm going to apply rules of notice and things like that and precedent. And the NFL is restricted by these things, or at least I feel I'm restricted by these things based on the past. And I just don't think that's consistent. I think that the NFL, whether it was the Myles Garrett suspension with, hitting Mason Rudolph on the head, he was suspended indefinitely. Is there anywhere in the CBA that says you can issue an indefinite suspension? I mean, none of these things, to my knowledge, are written anywhere. It's just the NFL issuing suspensions. They think it's fair. And frankly, I think if you're Deshaun Watson, you have noticed that if you're sexually assaulting multiple women, that you're going to get suspended for a very long time. I think that's fair notice.
Yeah. And, some people view it as the NFL trying to, retroactively hit the reset button on precedent. Which is interesting, but at the same time, I don't think that these types of allegations have ever been around before. I don't know that there is precedent for something like this. And people will throw a lot of buzzwords around that to me don't really mean anything with this process, like due process or, things like that. The NFL, to me, is a business. They have their own policy. This is a labor issue, not a criminal issue. And the NFL doesn't have the same process as the justice system when dealing with these things. The other thing that I've been seeing a lot of is, people are talking about injunctions and restraining orders and things like that. Can you give us any insight into what recourse Watson has if the NFL were to say you're suspended indefinitely? Some people believe he could still see the field. Injunctions, restraining orders, again, these are the buzzwords. Yeah. How does that work?
So, I think the best way to think about this problem and this issue is to think about it sort of in an exaggerated example. So let's think about it this way. Does anybody have any doubt in their common sense that if the NFL tomorrow came out and said, we're suspending Myles Garrett for the next 2 years because he's too damn strong. We just think he's too damn strong. He's too good looking. He's too cool. We're suspending him for 2 years. Does anybody think that Myles Garrett can't file a lawsuit and probably succeed on that lawsuit? Now, I don't have to explain to you the specific claims Myles Garrett would file or what would be the actual procedural route, but I think we could all agree that we know in our minds, that just doesn't sound like that's something that you can do, right? And that's what's sort of going on here, which is that if the NFL is acting so outside of the scope of its agreement and their suspension, or they're applying their agreement through these players so inconsistently that there would be potentially a cause of action to file a lawsuit in federal court saying the NFL is actually not abiding by the CBA as we understand it. That would be the cause of action. And through that cause of action, he could potentially see the field if, number one, a TRO is granted, a temporary restraining order, a temporary protective order is granted, or number two, a final decision on the issue is granted eventually at some point in the season. The latter is very unlikely. Cases take years. It could be years before a final decision is issued on something like this. So it really comes down to what are the odds that a TRO is granted? I've done TROs in federal court before. They're difficult. The standard's high. It's a multi-pronged test. One of the prongs is likelihood of success on the merits. Another one of the prongs is irreparable harm, and that prong is taken very literally. If you can be remedied via a monetary payment, then courts will usually say then there's no irreparable harm. So if you're asking me, do I think a TRO is likely to be granted? I would say no. It's more likely than not it won't be granted. It doesn't mean it can't, but it's complicated and it's difficult.
All right. We have D here that says, overall, the NFL needs a clear policy developed like yesterday that sets very specific guidelines for every type of offense. You can't go into these things with such a loose policy and expect anything other than a clusterfuck like this. And D, I would agree with you to some extent, although I don't know if we could have seen this coming with this many allegations. These allegations in and of itself are unprecedented. And D also said earlier, and I want to jump back to this. The rumor is their big thing is they don't want him to play against the Texans. Is it possible they can say 6 games plus that game and a hefty fine? Ryan, Blake, I'm struggling with the logic on this one. Why would the NFL give 2 shits about them playing the Texans?
They don't.
Okay, I'm just I
In my
can't
opinion,
put
they
the
don't.
pieces
I mean,
together.
it's silly.
You know, maybe somebody's mind works different and it makes sense to them. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Oh, I'd love to address this question.
Good.
Yes.
This
one I
that
just
you
put up.
just highlighted.
All right, and I have a question. What in the heck is Goodell saying? We see the evidence. Hello, what evidence is he talking about? 2 grand juries say otherwise. Now, Blake, before you answer this, we did have an interesting discussion about this the last time you were on the show. The last time you were on the show was shortly after the grand jury's decline to indict Deshaun Watson, and we discussed the reasonings behind why grand juries don't indict people, and you implied that it wasn't always innocence or lack of evidence. So I don't know if that has anything to do with your answer, but I'm curious to see what you have to say about that.
Yeah, I mean that is a lot of the answer, but I'll add some new information, which is information I didn't know at the time, which is that, and I just wish there was a way for me to broadcast this to everybody who talks about these grand jury indictments over and over and over again. In Texas, for misdemeanors, you don't need a grand jury to indict a defendant. You can directly indict a defendant. And this is done in misdemeanor cases all across different states because basically states have said, listen, if we're charging you with a puny crime, we're going to have puny process, right? So we're just going to be able to, a prosecutor can file an information, submit it to court, boom, we have an indictment, now we get the case started. So in Texas, that's the rule. So ask yourself, in Texas, if a prosecutor doesn't need a grand jury to get an indictment for a misdemeanor, and Deshaun Watson was only being investigated at this time for misdemeanors, why would they be using a grand jury to try to get misdemeanor indictments? The answer is because the prosecutors want to signal to society that they are looking into the issue. They're trying to signal to people, we're doing our due diligence. But obviously, the prosecutors don't actually want an indictment, because if they did, they would have filed it directly. Now, a fair question in response to this would obviously be, okay, but if the prosecutors don't want an indictment, isn't that the same thing? Isn't that saying that the cases suck? No. If a prosecutor doesn't want an indictment, it could be saying that the prosecutors think there might be decent evidence here. They think that Deshaun Watson might certainly be guilty, but they don't think that they can get a conviction. Well, I shouldn't say that. They are worried that it will be very difficult to get a conviction beyond a reasonable doubt, or that the work that it's going to take to do that outweighs the benefit. And so they say, you know what, maybe we can get a beyond a reasonable doubt conviction, but it's just not worth it for this office. We have murders we're trying to focus on. We're not trying to worry about this misdemeanor level of unwanted touching. And that's probably what happened. I worked as a prosecutor at one point in my career for misdemeanors in DC when I first started out. Misdemeanors were stabbings in Washington, D.C. If you weren't stabbed, we weren't even prosecuting it as a misdemeanor. If someone complained to a police officer or our office that they were assaulted under the letter of the law because somebody touched them and they didn't want the touching and it was obvious, we would say that's terrible and we're sorry. We don't have the time to do that. So whether or not there was indictment at this stage is meaningless. The evidence that the Goodell is talking about is the evidence that Sue Robinson saw through the adversarial proceeding with the NFLPA and the NFL, and she concluded by a preponderance of the evidence, an even higher standard than the grand jury, that he committed sexual assault. And I think that we should believe that.
So you're telling me, and I didn't know this, and this isn't something I've seen come up in any arguments or discussions or threads. This is interesting. So in Texas, for these misdemeanors, you don't even need a grand jury to indict. So you're saying that the only reason these went in front of a grand jury was to make it appear as if they were doing their due diligence.
Exactly, which is exactly when this happened, the day that it came out, I believe one of my first tweets was, if they didn't get an indictment, it's because they didn't want it. You can always get a grand jury indictment. When I found out the grand jury didn't indict, to me that just said, wow, the prosecutors really didn't want this case.
All right, so very interesting. Very, very interesting. I did not know that. Good information, Blake. Ryan, do you have any questions about this before we move on to these next comments?
I did have one question regarding, and I don't know how accurate this tweet was, but I did see one of the NFL blue check marks out there that someone had tweeted that this new agent for Goodell has his own practice that is linked to the NFL. Does that provide some type of conflict of interest as far as labor law goes? I know that was floating around on Twitter. Like, if he doesn't do what the NFL wants him to do, they can, adversely affect his business essentially. So he's more inclined to rule on their favor, like kind of thing.
That's an interesting question. The answer to me is almost absolutely no, because a conflict of interest, by definition, you have to have a duty that's conflicting with what we're talking about. He is acting as an agent of the NFL. So if anything, not only is this not a conflict of interest, it's a perfect alignment of interest. He is only interested in doing exactly what the NFL wants. And through this CBA procedure, the appeal is going to a party, the NFL, which is only supposed to be doing precisely what the NFL wants. So I would say, no, it's not a conflict. It's a direct alignment of interests.
Makes sense.
Norman, how's it going? Thanks for joining the show. Ryan, I'm going to ask another question on top of that. So just for clarification, the Sue Robinson was jointly appointed by the NFLPA and the NFL. She was truly independent as an arbitrator. You're saying that the former attorney general that's an agent for the NFL, they're actually aligned. This is not some independent appointee to decide something. Okay.
This is Roger Goodell's agent. And if anybody makes the argument of, if in fact the conflict of interest would be if we found out that this individual had some criminal defense experience representing defendants of domestic assault, that would be the conflict of interest for the NFL. The NFL would say, hey, we didn't know that this was in your background. We only want you to represent our interests in seeking this appeal.
All right, so we do have some questions in the comments. Redleg wants to know, in the next CBA, do you think both sides target this for adjustment? Fairly clear this is a broken process. Here's the thing, and then I'll let you two weigh in if you'd like. I don't necessarily think the process is broken. I think it was a step in the right direction. Roger Goodell was judge, jury, and executioner before. Like I said, he would decide if somebody was quote unquote guilty and then decide what their punishment is, start to finish, the whole disciplinary process. The NFLPA and the NFL, they came to a compromise and said, we're going to let somebody independent, establish findings of fact that are binding, as Blake said earlier. So the guilty or not guilty, so to speak, is not up to Roger Goodell anymore. Now, there could still be some process made in the player's direction. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that they'll attack this process or the NFLPA will? Do you think they'll try to change language or the way that they define certain things? Or do you think that they'll actually change the process itself? What do you think, Blake?
Well, I mean, before we even get to that, it's going to be 8 years before we even go there, right? Because the CBA is only 2 years old. It'll last for 10 years. So in 8 years, I think you made an interesting point where you said something like the NFLPA will try to make progress. That's how it's going to work. Yeah, in the next CBA, they'll probably get a little bit more, and they'll have to give up a little bit more, and somewhere else, maybe the salary cap won't get as high as they want to be, or something like that. And if we haven't killed each other in the next 50 years, and the NFL is still around, I'm sure the process is going to look much different than this. But that's because that's how negotiations work over time.
Jose says they should move to more of a council type disciplinary committee, former players and league reps together. I think this kind of represents what the NFLPA is, right? They are a union and they represent the players. Maybe what Jose is alluding here is more of like a Supreme Court type thing where you have a certain number of independent arbitrators, I guess, or I don't even know if that's what you would call it, but maybe multiple decision makers where there's a process there. Maybe they vote on it, something like that. But any thoughts on that, Ryan or Blake?
Uh, I don't know. I don't think the process is broken. I think that's just us as Browns fans being overly emotionally invested into this situation. Obviously, the NFL Players Association, they agreed to this process, and I think I've even said on Twitter in my emotional moment that this process sucks. I can't believe that they're allowing this to happen. But the fact of the matter is, it was agreed upon, and it just sucks that it's us as Browns fans that are suffering in this situation. And I think a lot of people are just, like I said, overly emotional about that situation. So, like said, in the future, they're probably going to try to pick at the secondary appeal process as a point that they want to change. But is that going to happen? That's hard to tell at this point. I mean, like he said, that's 8 years from now.
Yeah, and Norman here says it's the secondary appeal process that's where the adjustments are needed, like removing Goodell from picking the appeal arbiter. So again, the former attorney general that was selected is an agent of the NFL, and he's not independent. So he is representing the NFL and Roger Goodell. If there was an independent, if it was, appealed to somebody independent,
then Roger Goodell would be then Roger Goodell would be pissed, and then it wouldn't be.
Yeah,
I guarantee you. I don't think people realize how these negotiations work. I guarantee you, at some point, the NFLPA and the CBA negotiation said, "Hey, Roger. Hey, NFL. Hey, owners. How about making the final decision maker someone independent?" And they said, "No, that's not what we want. I want the decision." And now that he has the decision, Browns fans are going, "Oh, this is crazy that he has the decision." It's not crazy. It's what they agreed to. This is the process.
So here's a question. And Norman, keep in mind, the NFL is not the only one that could have appealed this decision. The NFLPA could have appealed this as well. If the NFLPA appealed this and the NFL did not, who selects whoever's handling the appeal? I mean, that would change, right?
No, it
wouldn't be an agent of the NFLPA. It would still be an agent of Roger Goodell.
It's always Goodell, which is why you have to imagine a scenario where when would it be that the NFLPA would appeal? And this is what I think people maybe lose track of because we're so emotional as Browns fans in this process. Roger Goodell, maybe I'll think later that I want to amend these words a little bit, but I feel comfortable saying this right now. Roger Goodell actually isn't that biased. You think Roger Goodell wakes up in the morning and goes, "You know what I want? I want my players to get suspended. I want there to be lots of news about bad allegations, and I want these great athletes to be sitting on the sideline." Roger Goodell is not incentivized for that. He really is trying to do what's in the best interest of his league, what's going to bring fans in, which includes having players on the field and having popular players not being accused and convicted of crimes. And so I suppose there certainly is a scenario where Sue Robinson does a fact-finding procedure and says, "I find that player XYZ, punched a male in the face after the male made a racist slur. I find this unacceptable. 2 years suspension." I think the NFLPA would appeal to Roger Goodell, and Roger Goodell would say, "Knowing what I know about how society feels about racial slurs and the sensitivity of all that right now, 2 years is unbelievable. I cannot do that. Maybe a game, maybe so in that situation, yeah, the NFL would appeal, NFLPA would appeal, and I think Roger Goodell would lower it."
All right. So Norman says Goodell has to be removed from the process to avoid the image of bias. I don't envision a scenario in which Roger Goodell being removed from the process would ever be something that would be agreed to. At the end of the day, this is a business. Again, this is not the justice system. The company sets its own policies. It's a business, and ultimately he's in charge of this business. So it's not fair, I guess, to everybody. There is always going to be bias. I don't know that there's a perfect system for this. Norman says the NFLPA sues in Delaware federal court the second the appeal arbiter rules a harsher decision. We will certainly see. I think you missed the first part of our conversation there earlier, Norman. Chris asked, could the NFLPA appeal the AG decision? Referencing the former attorney general. So this is it, right? This is final.
It's final.
Okay.
People need to understand the distinction between appealing and filing a an ancillary lawsuit, sort of like a secondary process. A lawsuit filed in federal court is not an appeal. It's a new process. It's a different allegation.
So, Norman, just to catch you up, we discussed earlier the scenarios in which the NFLPA could sue the NFL and how that would look. And there's kind of two ways they could go about it, right? That we talked about earlier. One takes years and years and years to get through the system. The other one is very difficult to be successful with. It wouldn't be a slam dunk. Chris Spann, different subject, but what's your thoughts on different owners and Goodell's decisions on them? So, Blake, I'll let you answer. Before you do that, I'm just going to say, again, I've said it before, the Daniel Snyder stuff, the Robert Kraft stuff, especially the Robert Kraft stuff that everybody likes to kind of put in the same kind of categories, Deshaun Watson, all these things are apples to oranges for me. They're not the same situation. It doesn't mean that they did any more or less wrong, but they're not the same scenarios. Ryan, what are your thoughts before we go to Blake?
No, I think we've talked about that ad nauseum. I mean, it's apples to oranges, like you said. It's not the same situation. The owners are completely different than the players. It's unfortunate, but it's the situation that we're in.
I definitely agree. I definitely agree that the Robert Kraft situation is completely different, and I get really bothered when people try to make that comparison as if they're the exact same. I do think that if Deshaun Watson files a lawsuit in federal court, one of his arguments is going to be the inappropriate application of the CBA suspension process and using Daniel Snyder as an example, because Daniel Snyder has been accused of a couple instances of sexual assault. So I do think that's probably something they'll argue, but it's a complex situation.
Their grievance will be against the NFL's biased discipline for owners versus players. Excuse me. I think that this is why Sue Robinson suggested 6 games, essentially, right? Because, and really she didn't even talk about this in her findings. Her findings were completely about the players. And I hear you guys when you say the owners are supposed to be held to a higher standard. That is, I mean, you can do what you want with that statement. Really, the NFLPA, the CBA is focused on the players. Okay, the players and their relationship with the NFL. The NFL may have gone soft on someone's, but I think that the root of this line of thinking, this statement, the reason why you're saying this is I think we think about the allegations against some of the owners differently, right? So I'm more apples to oranges. Like with Robert Kraft, he got caught red-handed, right? Getting happy endings at a massage parlor. People are running with the fact that this was a young girl that was supposedly trafficked. I don't even know if that was true. You can't prove that Robert Kraft knows or knew or suspected she was trafficked. And anybody could say, well, if you're going into these places, these girls are usually trafficked. No, you don't. That's the most common argument that I see when I push back with that is that he knew, he had to have known. No, his judgment was impaired enough that he went and got happy endings and didn't think he was going to get caught. He wasn't thinking about whether or not this young lady was trafficked. All right. This isn't Epstein's Island we're talking about. The allegations are completely different and the circumstances are different. And the way that there's evidence or not evidence is completely different. Daniel Snyder, John Gruden, completely different situations. I'm not saying the NFL punished these folks fairly. I'm just saying that they're different. I don't think they belong in the same conversation. Ryan or Blake, thoughts?
I agree.
I agree.
Okay. All right. And then Jose, maybe a bit away from topic, but is this
wait, can I
Sure.
respond to Norman's last point? Norman says, yes, it was true, and ignorance is not an excuse, it's the law. Norman, in criminal law, mens rea is an essential element of almost all offenses. Mens rea is not knowledge of a law, it's knowledge of the facts that make the law illegal. So, Robert, you're correct, Norman. Robert Kraft can't say, I didn't know it was illegal to get hat bandings. You're right. That's not a defense. It is a defense to say, I didn't know she was being sexually trafficked. That is a defense to be participating in a sex trafficking ring. In almost all criminal laws, mens rea, your mental intent, is an essential element of the offense.
Norman also said treatment of Cap, Coach Flores, and even Gruden. Gruden, what was his punishment? Do you guys remember? I don't even remember what his punishment was. Flores, that's something that's in process. I don't know what's going to come of that. I really don't even know how I feel about that and some of the other coaches that got involved with that. Cap, honestly, I shouldn't even go there. Listen, guys, in my opinion, Cap just isn't that good of a quarterback. He's not that good of a quarterback. If an NFL team signs him for good PR, it's not going to outweigh the bad PR for when they have to cut him because he doesn't make the 53. These teams would sign him if they were confident they wouldn't have to cut him, but they don't want to be the last team to cut Kaepernick. I don't know. But Jose, maybe a bit away from topic, but is this the same deciding process going to be used in determining discipline for the Texans or any team in any situation? Why aren't the Texans more at the forefront of this? Why hasn't the NFL done anything to discipline the Texans? Will they? What do you guys think, Blake?
Yeah, I don't know. The fact that I haven't seen the NFL talk about how they're opening up an investigation. If the NFL is not opening up an investigation against the Texans, that's another argument Deshaun Watson should be using, because to me, that's pretty egregious.
I would say that it's got to be, unless there's damning evidence that shows that they knew he was sexually assaulting people or was getting accusations of this after the fact. Like, how can they prove that they knew? Like, the Texans are just going to come back and say, we were just setting up rooms for him for massages. Like, we didn't know that this was going on. It's almost like a plausible deniability, right? I mean, like, it's so sticky. Like,
the reason why I just don't think the reason why I would say it's inconsistent is because the bottom line is the NFL only started investigating Deshaun Watson once there was so much smoke around Deshaun Watson, right? And there were 30 lawsuits, I believe, maybe not even lawsuits, but just individuals making claims against the Texans, and the Texans settled them. They settled 30. And I think that if we woke up tomorrow and found out that Nick Chubb's settled 30 cases against individuals who claim that he abused them, the NFL would investigate, right? The NFL wouldn't say, hey, they're just settlements. They would investigate. So I think that they should investigate this as well, because we have 30 settlements, which is significant.
For sure.
Very significant. I don't think any of us are claiming this is a perfect system. It's a better system than it was prior to this CBA. The justice system isn't perfect. There's no perfect systems that I'm aware of that are anywhere near this, what we're discussing. Norman says Gruden sent emails with racist comments when he wasn't working in the league and he was fined and fired. I would say if he was fined and fired for something he did when he wasn't even employed by the league, I'm almost surprised that they did anything at all.
It doesn't bode well for Watson.
It doesn't. No.
It's not a good argument for him.
And again, I don't think any of us are sitting up here and saying it's okay what Gruden did. It was not okay. Those things are not okay in the workplace. But, this also shouldn't bode well for the Texans, which is exactly what we're talking about. Gruden got punished for something he did when he wasn't even employed by the NFL or an NFL team.
Yep.
In the Texans, yes, you are correct. So far, they are skating. Chris says, do you think the NDA that was given to Watson could hurt the Texans? Was it an employee of the Texans that did that? So it was somebody involved with their security.
Head of security, I believe, wasn't it?
Head of security. Former Secret Service agent, worked for the Texans, gave him NDAs. I think Watson actually approached him about it and said, hey, I'm dealing with these issues. and they said, don't worry, have him sign this stuff. And then it kind of evolved from there. He sued and the league settled. I'm assuming he's talking about Gruden.
I thought he was talking about Kaepernick. Maybe both.
Cap? Okay.
Yeah.
Did anybody see any Kaepernick stuff floating around today? My wife was asking me about it. I didn't see anything.
There was a fake report that was like a photoshopped breaking news Browns thing that was on Facebook. I had somebody message me about it, and I was like, he's like, is this seriously real? And I said, no, it's not real.
People will fall for the dumbest things. I remember one of my friends, like a couple of years ago, sent a breaking news picture that said, breaking news, Allen Iverson coming out of retirement to play for the Warriors. And my friend was like, oh man, the Warriors are going to be sick. And we're like, Allen Iverson's 50 years old. He can't even, he's not even good. Like,
Right.
He's walking with a cane at this point.
Yeah.
All right. So Ryan, do you have any other questions for Blake about the Deshaun Watson stuff before we move on? Because there's other things going on. And Blake, I'm sure you would love to talk about other football stuff just as much as the legal stuff.
No, I don't have any other questions. I'm good. He's hit everything the way that we would have expected it to.
All right. And Norman clarified here, NFL settlement with Gruden and Flores.
The NFL hasn't settled with Flores.
I didn't think so either. Either. All right. So we're going to kind of change the subject a little bit. We have all the time in the world over the rest of the offseason to talk about the Deshaun Watson stuff. This isn't the end. There is more to come. But what we are going to do is we are going to go to our Twitter poll. Here we go. All right. So we posted our weekly Twitter poll, which we have been doing sometimes and sometimes not doing. We've been kind of bad about that, but we posted the following question. What should the Browns do with Kareem Hunt? Trade him, extend him, nothing, or other? Now, context, if you've been living under a rock, reports came out that Kareem Hunt didn't participate in team drills for multiple days because he asked for an extension or to be traded, which led to a lot of speculation and some difference between some Browns fans. Some feel they should do certain things. Others feel they should do something else. Ryan, how did you or would you have answered this poll?
I think I answered to extend him. It's no secret I'm a big fan of Kareem. I've argued with people all summer that Kareem's not going to be traded, blah, 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 right? I just think that the backfield is too dynamic with him and Chubb in it. But that being said, I don't think he did himself any favors. This was a very awkward time for the Browns for him to come out and do this. Doesn't sit right with me. So he kind of made me put my foot in my mouth a little bit with that. But, I'm still a huge fan. I still think he's better for the team than not. So for that reason, I think they should try to work something out, a team-friendly couple-year deal with him if they can. And I did think it was very surprising that Nick Chubb, who is usually reserved in how he speaks, was very vocal about wanting Kareem to stay on the team. So, but I chose extend him.
Did you guys see, some people were talking about Jarvis Landry posting something on Instagram, free Reem.
Yes.
Did you guys see that?
Yes.
That doesn't sit well with me if he said that. That bothers me a little bit. And Baker's not even here, so
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something there. Blake, how would you have voted in this poll?
I think this Kareem Hunt situation is the perfect situation where the right answer is just to do nothing. I mean, I think he's too old and expensive to extend. He's too good to trade, and you got him on your roster and you're trying to compete right now. Keep him. I wouldn't extend him. I mean, maybe I would extend him for a year if I think the value would be there, but he's going to be 28 next year. This is like right the time when they start to fall off a cliff. So I think having him for this next year is perfect, right, and then let him go.
If they do extend him, it definitely has to be something that's team friendly. You're not going to, tie up that much more money into the position for sure.
Yeah, which and his window's closing, right? He's like 27 years old. He's got a few good years left. The Browns, kind of resurrected his career after his own issues and incidents. And he came in and he performed and did his job, and the Browns gave him a new contract after that, right? And it was a team-friendly deal. It was kind of a hometown discount. Thanks for, helping me come back. And I think that he's starting to realize that his window's closing, and this is his chance to kind of get that last bag before his career winds down. Blake is on the spot. He's too talented to trade. What realistically would you get for him anyways? Like a fourth at best?
Yeah.
At best?
At best.
I don't want to trade Kareem Hunt for a fourth.
The only way I would even consider it is if I was getting a for sure starting wide receiver back. That's it. If I'm getting an offensive weapon back in a position of need, then for sure I will consider that, because I know that they have a pretty deep running back room. But that's the only way I'm considering a trade, in my opinion. I'm not just trading him to get rid of a weapon on my offense for a 4th round pick. Screw that.
Yeah, and the defense is kind of set, right? There was a lot of people that wanted to set Twitter on fire today with the Browns should trade Kareem Hunt for Roquan Smith because he wants to trade out of Chicago, and people feel we need somebody like that in our linebacking core. But really, the defense is pretty well set outside of, to me, the defensive tackle position. And there's viable free agent options there, right? You look at the offensive side of the ball, and there is a shortage of quality wide receivers. We have a shit ton of wide receivers on our roster. None of them inspire a whole lot of confidence, at least to me. We have a number 1, a fringe number 2, number 3 wide receiver, and then we have a bunch of 4s and 5s, right? At best. I mean, let's be honest. Like, not every wide receiver is going to be an all-star, as great as they look in camp. We have the Jordan Norwoods and the Taylor Gabriels that will probably waste what they do have and then let them, go someplace else. But, to me, is Dearness Johnson serviceable? Yes. Will he sign on with the Browns after this year? Who knows? He could start for some teams. He could have a huge role someplace else. If you do something with Kareem, you do it after you extend Dearness Johnson for a lengthy period of time, and then your leverage isn't as strong with Kareem because everybody knows what you're doing. Kind of like what happened with Baker. Just not as it's not as in the news cycle, I guess, or not as sexy or divisive. And then you have Jerome Ford and Demetric Felton, and you have these other guys. And are they serviceable? Sure. Are they Kareem Hunt? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I just don't see a scenario in which letting Kareem Hunt get out of the building benefits the Browns at all. The offense is very clearly going to be run focused. They're never going to give Nick Chubb the volume. I tweeted today, I would love for Nick Chubb to get the volume. He could be a 2,000-yard rusher in the NFL. I believe that with every ounce of my being that he could be a 2,000-yard per year rusher with the volume. They're never going to do that. If they get rid of Kareem Hunt, that doesn't mean more work for Nick Chubb. That means you're putting Johnson in there. You're putting Ford in there.
Would you do a Kareem Hunt for Tyler Lockett deal?
No, I don't think so. That's a tough one. But I don't think so.
It depends if how long Watson's in.
Right.
If Watson is going to play a substantial portion of the season, yeah, I would.
So Jose says, pay him on Chubb's comments alone, guarantee his money for this year. Now, here's where the Browns do have leverage, right? They gave Nick Chubb a contract extension. Nick Chubb is clearly a superior option to Kareem Hunt. Nick Chubb's contract did not change the world. It did not reset the market. It was actually a value for Cleveland, in my opinion. He's getting paid less than guys like Aaron Jones. This is something that could help the Browns. The Browns could say, we'll give you more money. We value you, but we're not going to, we're not going to pay you more than Nick Chubb. That would be ridiculous.
Right.
but to me, it's probably about the money for Hunt, and that's not a terrible thing. That's why these guys are here.
I still genuinely believe he wants to be here.
I do too.
One thing that really bothers me is the way people, especially fans, obviously, like we act like we don't see a pattern every single offseason in almost every single sport. Player demands trade, gets the contract, signs on. I remember there was a video of Deebo Samuel at the club a couple months ago where someone was like, "Deebo, are you staying?" And he was like, and people were like, "Okay, this is serious. Like this guy not only wants out, but he like actually doesn't like it here." He just signed a huge extension. It's like Kareem wants to be here. He lives in Cleveland in the offseason before he got even started playing here. He just wants to get paid.
Right. You're muted, bud.
It's actually been a while since I've done that. Who volunteers to live in Cleveland voluntarily? Exactly. Most people don't live in Cleveland by choice. He wants to be there when he can go anywhere in the
Which is why, by the way, like the Jarvis Landry, like free reams, like that stuff is so stupid because it's like free him. He chooses to live here.
He's not in jail, guys. I mean, come on.
All right, so I'm kind of in the extend them boat. I agree with both of you guys. On one hand, we probably shouldn't do anything. We should be like, Kareem, come on, like show up, earn your next contract. Maybe it'll be here. Maybe it won't be. I kind of want to lock him up though, because, in the absence of Chubb, and that's happened, right? It's happened. We've actually depended on Kareem Hunt, and he's filled in and he's done very well. It helps to have a 1A and a 1B. Now, there's been times where even with both those two guys, we've had to lean on Dearness Johnson. And to me, that's a Dearness Johnson or Jerome Ford role. So Kareem Hunt, he can play in the slot. He was a little more versatile, but he's got that big play ability. So even if you have to pull Chubb off the field, you still have that big play ability. If it was up to me, I'd keep it at 6 and be done with it.
He wants to sign Kareem Hunt for 6 years.
6 years.
Extend
him, pay that man. I don't know about 6 years, but 2 or 3, absolutely. Now, Brown's Twitter is the strangest place on earth. How do you guys think Brown's Twitter voted, Ryan?
Extend him.
Extend him. They definitely would say extend him.
All right.
I'm part of it, so I did it.
Here it is. Here are the results. 19% said trade him, extend him 59%, nothing 21.9%. I put an other in there. Nobody got creative. That was 0%.
I've got every Browns Twitter correct since we started this show together.
Do you guys remember when we everybody wanted to extend what was Demarius Randall? And it was like, we got to extend him. He's the best. Demarius Randall never started another game, I don't think, for any NFL team ever. It's like Browns fans, we love the players that start for our team, even if they're trash. When you get a guy like Kareem Hunt who's actually good and he wants to be in Cleveland, people will be wanting to extend him for the next decade.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually an argument that's been on our show weekly. Right. Is me and Ryan don't agree on who's good and who's not, because the number one rule of being a Browns fan is overvaluing your players and undervaluing others' players. We love and we hate players.
Right. Wait, who do you guys think is not, who's somebody that you think is good that the other person says they're not actually good?
Ryan is a Jacoby Brissett stan. I think we're fucked.
Oh, I think we're fucked.
Okay.
Now hold on. Now wait a minute. Hold on a second. I'm not saying that this guy is going to light the world on fire, but in my defense, I think he is serviceable enough that if Watson is only out 6 to 8 games, he can keep the record respectable. He's going to make right decisions. He's not going to throw a ton of interceptions. He's not going to, light the world on fire. He's not going to throw for 450 yards every game, but he's going to do enough to win you some games. That's all I'm saying.
I'm with you.
Craig thinks he's trash.
I do think he's trash. Craig. I do think he's trash. I think we are I think he's a poor man's Deshaun Kaiser. essentially at this point.
Oh,
No, he's a rich man's Deshaun Kaiser.
yes, dude. You're
Maybe.
saying he's
Maybe.
worse than Deshaun
I know.
Kaiser?
I'm just trying to be dramatic here. No, I think that I think the 500 is the best case scenario with Jacoby, and that's with a healthy wide receiver core, which we don't have. What do you think we're going to do? We are going to run the ball. I don't look at Jacoby Brissett's box score over his career and take his touchdown to interception ratio and get any confidence from it. I've asked other fan bases, what are we to expect from Jacoby Brissett? And some of you admittedly won't read the comments because you don't want to know, because you know what they say. You know what they say.
I'm right.
I keep retweeting that tweet where I have 100 Colts and Dolphins fans telling me what to expect from Deshaun or from Jacoby Brissett, and Browns fans will not read it. They won't. Go ahead, Blake.
No, I was just going to say we should start calling him Jacoby Kaiser or something.
Jacoby Kaiser.
I saw somebody, there was a tweet about something about Baker Mayfield had a great 2-minute drill. Ellis Williams tweeted about it or something. And then someone responded, yeah, wait till the season comes and it actually matters in a real game and the 2-minute drill disappears. And a Panthers fan said, you're just salty. It's like, no, fans know. When you watch a guy for a long time, fans know. And if you ask Dolphins fans and Colts fans what to expect, they're going to tell you. And if you just say, they're salty or whatever. No, they know. They know. Listen.
Yeah.
I didn't even want to read him, and I agree with him. Like, I'm rooting for the guy. Like, right? He's going to be my quarterback for an unknown, but certainly a period of time. Like, I'm going to root for the guy. I'm going to be cheering him on, but my expectations are going to be tempered. And listen, the Kaiser thing, poor comparison. I don't know why I pulled that name out of my ass.
Terrible.
But, because he was embarrassing. He was butt fumbling and throwing the ball behind him, and he didn't know what he was doing out there. Right?
I got a question for Blake. If, let's say, Deshaun Watson is gone for the whole season, indefinite suspension, right? Do you think they stick with Jacoby, or do you think they try to go out and pull a Garoppolo out of the butt?
No, I think they stick with Jacoby, because if Deshaun Watson's gone for the season, it's done.
Yeah.
Season's over. You're fucked. And I don't know why you would want to waste salary cap on, whatever Garoppolo is going to cost in addition to whatever you paid percent. I don't know why you would want to, if you trade for Garoppolo, why you would want to waste draft capital. I would say actually sort of take the opposite perspective. If Deshaun Watson's suspended for the season, if I'm Andrew Berry, I'm getting in the room and I'm saying, how can we blow this up this year and save as much money this year as possible? Who can we cut this year that we know is not going to be here next year, but we were holding on? Maybe a guy like Kareem. If you cut Kareem, you get to roll over his cap money. I think he's like one of the top 10 paid running back. Roll over his cap money next year. Do it. You're not winning a Super Bowl this year. Get rid of it.
Right. So you don't see the argument of trying to get somebody to come in to savor a year of Chubb and Garrett's youth?
No, because I think that you took a swing when you took Watson. If he gets suspended for the year, you wasted the year. You took a swing and you missed on the year.
Hopefully not beyond. All right. More tough news coming out of camp today. And I believe it's actually confirmed now. My son called me. He was in a panic. He was at training camp today. And for those of you that think that I have a burner account, at Cadell Landon is actually my son. Ryan actually can vouch for this. People don't believe me. People don't believe that he's my son.
He is.
Yes, he is my son. He's not my burner account. He was at training camp. He called me. He was upset. He said, well, first he called me. He's like, oh my God, I'm standing next to Tony Grossi. Like, he's right here next to me. I was like, did you say Jesus, Tony? But then he's like, all right, I'll call you back. So he calls me back and he's like, oh man, he was almost in tears. He said, Jakeem Grant is getting carted off the field. And I'm like, oh man. So I open up Twitter and sure enough, Cammy and everybody else is posting videos of him getting carted off. My son just texted me. So you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but supposedly they confirmed that it's an Achilles and he's done for the year.
I'm not seeing it.
So Ryan, you've been a advocate over the past few months, since the draft, saying we need depth at wide receiver. And really this is, we had David Bell on the pup list. We had some other things going on, Anthony Schwartz. This is just another injury. Now, granted, Jakeem Grant was going to be most valuable probably on special teams.
Right.
I tweeted out earlier today, this is not the way we wanted to find out Felton or Schwartz was keeping one of their jobs.
Right.
But this just goes to show you, like, this argument that you've been making that we need depth, we need to go make a move and get somebody. Not the way you want to do it, but it's certainly starting to validate those thoughts for you.
Yeah, correct. I mean, I've been getting blasted on Browns Twitter all offseason for this one because I've been saying that I think they're stupid if they go into the season with just, what they had. I'm always in the camp that you can never have too many weapons in the NFL. We saw it last year when the Rams won the Super Bowl. I mean, they had Van Jefferson, they had Cooper Kupp, they had Odell, they had at one point
after
Robert Woods.
Losing Robert Woods, by the way.
Yeah, after losing Robert Woods. I mean, they had Robert Woods. Shoot, they could have ran it with Cooper Kupp and Van Jefferson, but no, they went out and got Odell, and Odell played some meaningful minutes for them down the stretch, made some meaningful catches, scored some meaningful touchdowns in the playoffs. So, to me, you can never have too many weapons. And I'm more of a show me guy, and I haven't seen enough from the two of them, DPJ, Schwartz, to say I'm comfortable with them being my number 2 and number 3 all year. Personally, I think the only thing Schwartz has been good at so far is the fly route. I think that's all we saw him do last year. I don't think he's going to stay healthy through the season. DPJ could come out and totally make me put my foot in my mouth, and I hope he does. But that's still 2 receivers. And I just think that in today's NFL, it's more of a passing league. And the good teams that have won the Super Bowl over the last few years have had multiple options at the wide receiver position. You have one option, and it's easy to shut down that one option and make you a one-dimensional football team. So we didn't have a pass game last year. We had to rely on the run game pretty much, half the season. And it didn't do us any justice. We have one of the best backfields in the NFL, and it still didn't do us any justice. So, I just think you can never have too many weapons, and I'm never going to get off that boat. It's just how I feel.
Yeah, and Blake, I know we're running over the hour mark. You're obviously welcome to stay with us as long as we're live. We tend to just keep talking and talking and talking.
Yeah.
But we were talking about this before the show actually started, and I know you had some opinions on this. What do you think? And you're muted, there you go. Don't make the same mistake I make every week.
I've done plenty of Zoom meetings. I got this mute thing down. I'm good. Yeah, I mean, I think that I do think that this, in a weird way, if I wanted to play devil's advocate and be optimistic, last year after Odell got hurt, and even if we want to talk about before Odell got hurt, with the chemistry that Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham Jr. had, I think that even this year, even with just Amari Cooper and DPJ as your number 2, it's a better it's a better wide receiver option for the quarterback, because last year Odell, when he was with the Browns, was basically a ghost, and then you had DPJ and Schwartz, and you guys reminded me of Higgins, but I mean, I'm sure
Jarvis.
Right, but so that goes to my point. Jarvis at this point of his career is like a number 3 to me, and when you have you're basically replacing Jarvis with Amari Cooper. I'm not actually the biggest Amari Cooper fan. I think he's good. I think that if he's your number 1, you're still kind of always looking for a better number 1. But I think he's a hell of a lot better as a number 1 option than Jarvis.
Oh, for sure.
So I think that I actually think that the drop-off on the wide receiver room, given that Odell was so bad for us the last couple of years, is actually not going to be that different.
It's fine. Just disagree with me on everything, Blake.
And I'm kind of with you, Blake. Like, I've never been an Amari Cooper fan when he was with Oakland or the Raiders, when he was with Dallas. Never a huge Amari Cooper fan. And there's receipts out there. I have my other podcasts I've been doing far longer than this one, where I used to just completely not really trash the guy, but I've been very vocal. I've never been a fan. To me, he's a mid to high 2, at best low end 1. when you're a low end one, you're one of the top 32 in the league. Is he top 32? Sure. Top 32 is fair. But I think, again, here we go. We're talking about players and overvaluing potentially players. And if you think he's a top 10, great, good for you. I love your optimism. I wish I had it. But there's work to be done. We have a high 2, low 1. We have a low 2, high 3 ceiling in my mind. And then we have a bunch of 4s and 5s at best. All right. Norman says, I've always liked Cooper, especially when he went against the Warden. Emmanuel Sanders, anyone? So here's the follow-up question. What options are there out there on the free agent market? There is jack shit. There's jack shit. And no, we're not going to have an OBJ reunion. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. Realistically, there's Will Fuller, who's made of glass, right? Can he be good? Sure. He's shown that he can produce
with Watson.
He can stay on the field.
Right.
With Watson. Sure. Fuller talented, but not very reliable. It's hard to depend on a guy like that. That needs to be like an X factor guy that you can, really excel with, but also not depend on. Like, he shouldn't be your plan A, right? He should be like a X factor type benefit, like an icing on the cake type of guy. Outside of that, there's really not a whole lot out there on the open market. And actually, the best route is probably going to be a trade or a roster cut around training camps. And some guys that come to mind. I'm shocked Andrew Berry wasn't in on this N'Keal Harry trade. That is the MO, right?
That's
a first round draft pick that completely shit the bed in the NFL, that is young, that is cheap, that costs next to nothing. You bring him in, try to resurrect his career. If you do, maybe you keep him around. Maybe you don't sweat it if he leaves, whatever.
Yep.
Ryan, I know you've mentioned guys like Laviska Shenault. Love that. Love Laviska Shenault. A guy that I don't see brought up very often that I think is going to be out of a job or could potentially be out of a job is Jalen Rhaegar. Also fitting Andrew Berry's MO in Philadelphia. He has an uphill battle to make that roster. He's like 24 years old. He's a former high-end draft pick. Completely shit the bed in the NFL. He hasn't done shit.
Yeah.
Ryan, who do we go get?
It's tough, man. I mean, there's slim pickings right now. And, you got to go through like every team in the NFL. You get 32 teams. You got to see who's possibly going to be available. I mean, you're just thinking off the top of your head, like I said in my tweet earlier today, Andy Isabella, maybe Laviska Shenault, Darius Slayton. These are all guys that have kind of been rumored to be possibly moved or, falling out of favor with their team. Andy, I would say probably is the less likely out of those three, just because I think he's more cemented in Arizona, but he
was a hot name last year, wasn't he? Like we had guys like frothing over that possibility, and then we didn't hear his name all year.
You look at him and he's another tweener. He's like a Hunter Renfrow guy where he's a short to medium route dude. Like, we just got rid of that in Jarvis and we drafted somebody like Bell to kind of take up that. So I don't know. There's nobody that jumps off the page to you. It's probably going to end up happening to be somebody like that, like just Andrew Berry's MO of someone who has not lived up to their expectation. That's cheap, that's young. And I mean, I don't see him going out and making some crazy trade for somebody who's, like a Terry McLaurin or some crazy stuff like that. It's not going to happen. But I think they definitely need to bring somebody in.
You guys want to play Smash or Pass?
Hell yeah.
Let's do this. Let's play Smash or Pass. You guys play along in the comments. I'm going to say a name, Ryan Blake. You guys say Smash or Pass. Will Fuller. We'll just start with the front runner.
Pass.
Smash.
Oh.
T.Y. Hilton.
Pass.
Pass.
Cole Beasley.
Pass.
Yeah, it's a pass.
Emmanuel Sanders.
Pass.
Greg, this is that Allen Iverson bullshit. He's
35.
Yeah, no, I'm good. Pass.
No. Pass.
Okay, so just so that we're clear, context. I don't know what's going on with my camera right now. Are you guys seeing some weird stuff?
Jesus, your internet. There it goes.
This is who's available. This is the cream of the crop right now.
Right.
All right. Alan Hearns.
Who?
Alan
Yeah.
Hearns.
No.
Former Bear. Former Bear.
Jacksonville
former
Jaguars too, right?
Jacksonville Jaguar. And Dallas Cowboy.
How old is he?
30.
No, pass.
He was last with Miami.
How
Deshaun
old's,
Jackson.
How old is Brian Robisky?
Oh my Lord.
Is he even in the league? What the hell?
What about, can we trade a second-round pick for Muhammad Massaquoi?
Yes. Bring him
Right.
back.
Who needs 5 fingers to catch a ball?
Oh, I forgot that he had a hand issue. Wow.
Yeah, he's missing a digit.
That's
Ohio Biker, welcome to the show. Get fuller.
What's going
please.
on?
We are playing Smash or Pass. Play along in the comments with wide receivers. So Deshaun Watson.
What?
Deshaun Watson? Or no,
Deshaun Jackson.
I'm like, what?
Jackson. Oh man.
Is this a joke? I'm gonna say pass on that.
Pass.
Danny Amendola.
Pass.
Yeah, pass.
All right. This is how bad the list is of available guys.
Oh, it's bad. I know the free agent list is terrible.
OBJ.
Pass.
I'd bring him back if he wanted to, but there's no way in hell he'd ever come back here.
Okay. Adam Humphries.
How old is Adam? He's probably 30 now, right?
29.
Oh, all right. He's still a tweener. I'd probably pass on that.
Pass.
All right. Here's a younger guy, a little bit younger than the others. He's 28. D.D. Westbrook.
Smash.
I like Westbrook.
Yeah, I'd take a flyer on him. He's young.
So I'm going down the list beyond this, and I'm willing to bet that the average football fan doesn't know any names beyond those.
No.
There's that's how dry the market is. So I guess, I think what I'm trying to say is I think that the best thing that could come is via a training camp cut or, kind of a low end trade, something we can send off a future 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th for. Guys like Jalen Rhaegar or, somebody's number 3 that could be a number 2, somebody's number 4 that could be a number 3. Yeah, I'm going to change my camera here, see if I can get this to stop. Holy cow, that's annoying.
There you go.
All right. Is there anything anybody else wants to bring to the table before we close out the show? No? All right. Sounds good. Blake, we appreciate you joining the show and sticking around for an hour and 20 minutes. That's awesome. Can't wait to have you on again. Hopefully we can get you on here in the future. And we certainly value your expertisce.
Yeah,
absolutely,
guys,
man.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
I'm not going to argue with you on Twitter anymore, Blake. I promise.
I just noticed. I don't know if you knew this, Craig. Ryan blocked me.
What? I blocked you?
Yeah, apparently, because I don't remember us ever interacting, and I just looked you up because I was like, did we ever talk? Did we ever argue? And it said you've been blocked.
No.
So I must have said something
man,
that annoyed him, or maybe he's just like, get this arrogant guy who keeps tweeting about Deshaun Watson.
I don't remember blocking you, to be honest with you.
I don't want to see this guy's. I don't agree.
I don't
with
even
this guy.
honestly, Ryan. I don't blame you. I would block me too.
I don't even remember blocking you, to be completely honest with you. I don't.
Blake, do you block people?
The only reason I don't block people is because I hate the idea of someone screenshotting it and posting it, being like, "This guy can't handle it. He had to block me." But I do mute people all the time.
I do have you blocked. I'm sorry, sir.
No, don't.
I only have. I think I have less than 10 people muted. I have never blocked somebody ever.
Yeah,
so
I
I
refuse
followed
to
you.
do it.
So I'm going to say that had to have been some type of error. Like I clicked it on accident or something, but I don't remember blocking you.
No,
Probably on accident.
No, honestly,
I
man,
swear to God,
if
I
you
swear I don't
have me
remember doing
blocked,
it.
there's probably a very good reason. Somebody tweeted at me the other day. They're like, Blake, I don't know if you know this, but you're really abrasive, and I'm starting to hate you. And he was like, I don't know if that's your intention or if you know this. And I'm like, that's perfectly fine. Like it's fine. I endorse the emotions that I bring out of people. If you're feeling it, go with it.
Oh man. I
Swear
just
to
can't
God, I
block
don't
people.
remember it.
You know,
Blake.
and there's a reverse psychology with this. When I have a series of trolls that continuously follow me around. It doesn't matter what I post, they're always there just telling me I'm an idiot. I will not only not block them, if I'm not following them, I will follow them and I will point it out to them. I'm still following you, even though you're a douchebag and I disagree with you because I'm the bigger person.
Yeah, see,
And
that
then
was,
usually they'll follow me back and then they'll never disappear. They're always there telling me I'm an idiot.
you're a bigger man than I am. I can't do that.
I would say that if I blocked you on purpose, I was probably inebriated and you said something and I was like, screw this guy.
Totally. I mean, it's warranted.
This Benjamin Albright stan out. Oh man.
Well, you are no longer blocked, so follow me back, please.
Please, I'm begging you. That's awesome. All right, Blake, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah,
We really appreciate it. Thank you guys.
Take care, buddy.
All right, so that is today's episode of the Dawgs Table. Great guest as always. I love Blake. Blake's awesome. He's candid. He'll tell you if he agrees with you or disagrees with you. He's not afraid to speak his mind, tell you what he thinks. Yeah, great resource. Great resource.
Yeah,
This is the Dawgs Table. We're a Cleveland Browns Roundtable discussion show brought to you by BIGPLAY, Labatt Blue Light, and Remax Edge Realty, the JCU group. We're here every Tuesday at 9 p.m. That's been our new time slot. It's been great. I've been getting to see all kinds of people that we didn't get to see before because we were on too early. And we still have the same great folks joining us at 9 that were already joining us at 8. It's awesome. I love it. I love it. So join us next Tuesday at 9. Until next time, go Browns.
Go Browns.